Thank you, Mihika, and thanks to all of you for coming here today. Good morning. I'm going to get started. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip through some slides and get right into the meat of the presentation. We are going to be talking about, what I'm going to be talking about today is why do we need to change the way we design buildings, and how are we doing that? Okay, so let me get started. Okay, so why do we need to change the way we design buildings? So as you can see, buildings account for 42% of the carbon dioxide emissions globally, and this is about the same percentage for buildings in the US as well. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. It directly contributes to global warming. We have just also launched into the largest building and infrastructure growth in the history of mankind. Starting about 2020, the amount of construction of buildings and public infrastructure has really picked up. 3/4 of the infrastructure that will exist in 2050 is yet to be built. So we're seeing a tremendous growth on this side. The global building floor area is expected to double by 2060. And I can directly, anecdotally, I can see this happening. I was born and raised in Bombay, India. I go back every year, and I can, when you're in Bombay, you cannot walk 2 minutes in any direction without without passing by an active construction site, and a active public infrastructure project. The whole city is like an active, it's like a massive construction zone, and people are just happen to be living in it. And I mean, this is the situation with just Bombay. I haven't been to some of the other big metros in India, so I can't speak to that. But this is just one city. So I mean, the whole city is, gentrifying and modernizing and upgrading at just an absolutely breakneck pace. So I can actually just see this anecdotally as well. So it's absolutely imperative that we do something about the way we change the way we are designing buildings, and we really do something to make buildings part of the solution rather than have them be part of the problem. So what I've done here today is I've picked out some parts of what we are doing to change the way we design buildings. I can't get into all of the things that we are doing differently, but I've picked out some parts to show you. So, obviously, California is the absolute leader amongst all states in the US in terms of our incredibly progressive energy efficiency, water efficiency goals, and that's been going a long way towards making our buildings a lot greener. And I'll walk through some of these things listed here through the other slides. So these are just some of the goals that California, the state government has set for California buildings. If you look at the first one, new homes, ZNE, by the way, is zero net energy. Zero net energy is when a building, all of the energy that a building needs and uses is offset by renewable energy, like, photovoltaics is the most common form of renewable energy that's used. So ZNE is, that's what ZNE is. And California has set all these goals for our buildings. It's, I don't know that we are going to hit these. Like, for example, we didn't hit the first one for new homes to be ZNE, by new home construction to be zero net energy by 2020. But it's like, shooting for the stars and landing on the moon, right? You hitch your wagon to a star, and you'll make a lot more progress that way. Two of the buildings I have shown over here on the slides. The first one is in Golden, Colorado. The one below it, the Unisphere, is in Maryland. These are two of the largest zero net energy buildings here in the US. The first, NREL is about, over 300,000 square feet. Unisphere is about 200,000 square feet, and they're both, they offset Both these buildings have gone a very long way towards reducing the amount of energy that they use, and then offsetting their energy use with photovoltaic solar panels on the roof. Both of these buildings are going to be, the biggest zero net energy building is being built in Dubai. The building is huge. It's over 2 million square feet. It's going to be the largest, it's slated for completion end of this year. Once it's built, it's going to be the largest zero net energy, not just the largest zero net energy building in the world, it's also going to be the smartest a building in the world with the very latest AI and smart building technology built in. So unfortunately, I should have put a photograph of that building here, but I missed doing that. So we are also doing, water efficiency is one of the things we are targeting, and we really need to, given the dire, freshwater source problems that being faced all over the U.S., not just California. California has gone a very long way towards reducing the amount of water that comes out of our faucets and showers and all. It's pretty much ultra low use. Water fixtures are pretty much mandated all over the state. We are using a lot of gray water. Gray water is the water that comes out from your sinks, your showers, your laundry. That's all gray water. There's a lot of projects now use that water for landscaping, irrigation, for some other uses. We also have the technology, and it's existed for a while now. We have the technology to recycle black water. Black water is the water that comes from toilets. There are many countries in the world, for example, Singapore. Singapore doesn't have any source of fresh water of its own. It imports all of its water usage from Malaysia. So, when you're importing something like water, you have to be very careful with the way you use it. So Singapore, for example, does a lot of black water recycling on a very large scale, where they take the water from toilets and it's filtered and cleaned and goes through an incredible amount of filtration and UV zapping and whatever multi-step process to get the water so clean it's ready for consumption, human consumption. So this happens very extensively in Malaysia. Australia does a lot of it. We do some of it in the US, but I'm pretty sure it's going to really pick up given what the situation is with our water bodies. So by water bodies, I mean lakes and rivers, and they're drying up at an alarming pace. Groundwater is being pumped at a very alarming pace for agricultural uses, so we really need to start doing this. So I'm pretty sure we are going to see a lot more black water recycling here in the US as well. There's alternative water. Alternative water is water from, if you have a sump pump in the basement, the water that the sump pump's picking up can be recycled, can be filtered and reused. You can also harvest rainwater in tanks, and that there's a whole technology to that as well. So these are all some of the things that we are doing to reduce the amount of water we are using in buildings. So let's look at the energy efficiency side of things. What are we doing to make buildings a lot more energy efficient, and how are we doing it? So what you're seeing here is the sun path diagram. It shows you it shows you what the sun's path is across the sky for our location. By our location, I mean here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are 37 degrees north of the equator. So this first, the first yellow curve that you see, that is summer solstice day. This year it was on June 21st. Summer solstice, you can see on summer solstice day, the sun rises 30 degrees north of east and sets 30 degrees north of west, and it cuts, the trajectory is much, much, much higher in the sky. So that's what happens on summer solstice day. The red curve that you see, on the sun path diagram, that's equinox. That was, September 22nd was our equinox. That equinox, on this autumnal equinox and the spring equinox, that's the day when the sun rises due east and sets due west. And from there on, basically after summer solstice, you see that the sun is going lower and lower into the sky. The trajectory is shorter and shorter. And on winter solstice, which is going to be December 21st, the sun is going to be the lowest in the sky, the day is going to be the shortest. So where am I going with all this? Basically, you can put this information, we have softwares available to us. We model our buildings using this information. So for example, let's say you were building a high-rise tower in San Francisco. When you incorporate the sun path diagram for the design of that high-rise tower, it tells you exactly what shadows that tall high-rise is going to be casting on adjacent buildings. Or, for example, you had a school complex which had several buildings, or you had universities, you had multiple buildings being built. You know from this that some buildings are going to be in shadow at certain times of the day, certain times of the year, and you kind of account for that. So when a building is in shade, that means the building is getting less daylight, but it's also getting less heat, and you would need less energy for cooling the building at that time. So using the sun path diagram tells you a lot. So for example, here on the, sorry about that. Here is, for example, if you're trying to shade a building, if you're trying to shade a window from, eastern or western sun exposure, the sun is much lower in the sky when it's in the east or the west, and you would need a vertical element outside the window to shade it. If you're trying to shade the window from the sun facing south, the sun is much higher in the sky, and you would need a horizontal shading element like an awning to keep the sun out. So these are just some of the ways that we can use the information we get from the sun path diagram to make buildings more energy efficient. What I'm showing here is actually very fundamental, very, very basic and simple. When you incorporate this information into building softwares, it just gets considerably more sophisticated than this. So this is the windrows diagram. I got this data from the weather station at Moffett Airfield in Mountain View. It tells you for the month of September which way the wind has been blowing, what the velocity of the wind has been, and kind of the percentage for how. I keep pressing the wrong. So it kind of it shows you the direction, the velocity, and the percentage of time that the velocity of the wind has been for. So this is actually pretty valuable information. You can use this information to orient your buildings in such a way that you can catch the direction of the prevailing breezes. So for example, times of the year like October, it's not too hot, not too cold. We are very lucky to live in a beautiful climate here. There are plenty of days during the year when we would need no heating or cooling inside our buildings. So we could actually use this information, orient our buildings to catch the direction of the prevailing breezes and provide free ventilation inside the spaces, or ventilation, or bring in the breeze with very minimal amounts of heating and cooling, and save energy rather than just putting the building as is wherever it works for us on the property, and then we don't pay any attention to the direction of the wind, and then we are using a lot more energy to heat and cool our buildings. So instead, we could if we paid attention to this, and we are doing it more and more, we are reducing the amount of energy we spend to heat and cool our buildings. Here's another way. We are saving energy. We are finding, we are looking at ways to save energy. So this is software called Light Stanza. What it does is it shows you the light levels, the daylight levels in the building at any given time. So, the red is what you see is the red is closest to the window. It's, as it goes further, deeper into the space, the amount of illumination reduces. So this is it maps out daylight illuminations levels very, very accurately, and it tells us when we will need to turn the lights on in which parts of the building, at what times of the day. So here is the same thing. It's Light Stanza again. And it tells you, for example, on February 8th at 10:15 in the morning, which parts of the building are going to be in shade, where lights are going to be needed, and what is the level of illumination we will need from the lighting in the space. So here's another way we can work with natural daylight. So what you see here, so this is a space, the person sitting at a desk. This is a window. So these are light shelves. Light shelves are highly reflective elements that you can install in windows, and what they do is they actually catch the sunlight, the rays of the light, and they will help bounce them deeper into the space. So that means you can push the daylight further and further into your rooms, and you need less and less lighting. So this is yet another way we are looking at ways to save energy. WELL is a certification that looks at ways that, we've talked about making buildings energy efficient and water efficient, but we also need to look at making buildings a lot more conducive for human occupancy. I mean, how do we ensure that occupants are happy, satisfied, productive in our buildings? And WELL is a certification that gives us the roadmap of how we can achieve that. So it basically uses all of these different criteria to rate a building, and under each of these criteria, there are techniques and tips that you can use to make the buildings a lot more, make sure the occupants in the buildings are a lot happier. So, and their mental and physical well-being is well taken care of. So you can use all of these factors and improve the building on all of these fronts, and WELL provides the roadmap for doing that. It's one of the certifications. Another thing we also look at is, all of the materials that we extract to make our products, we transport them to building sites, we build them into our buildings, and a lot of these products we are putting into our buildings, when the buildings get demolished, these products are ending up in the landfill, and that's the last thing we want. So rather than looking for products that are cradle to grave, we are increasingly trying to push for products in our buildings which are cradle to cradle. So, at the end of life, rather than going into the landfill, we can reuse these products and put them back into the economy. So this is another one of the things that we are paying a lot of attention to, and I think AI is going to help us tremendously, because especially this part of the design process is extremely data intensive and a lot of number crunching, and I think AI can be a huge benefit here. And this is simply all about smart building technology. It's building sensors into everything that give us real-time feedback on how many occupants are in the building, where are we cooling the building excessively, where are we, if there are leaks in the building, they can all be addressed with sensors, and we are increasingly building a lot of technology into our spaces and buildings to help us with all this. So this is just that. And I'm going to end right there and open it up to questions. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Given that construction is one of the two most polluting industries,
Yeah.
how is the design viewpoint adjusted for the actual constructing of the building to account for
Yeah.
more?
That is very true. Let me go back to one of my previous slides. I skipped over that slide to save time, but this is actually one of my projects. It's right along the coast in Monterey. I need my pointer. So this building, for example, you see this deck. This deck extends 40 feet over the waters of the Pacific. And when we were building this project, and especially this deck, it was really quite a feat of construction. We were not allowed to have any debris, any tools, not a speck, fall into the waters down below. That was one of the conditions. We could not. We had to ensure we didn't dirty the waters in any way. So before any of this construction started, the contractor, the construction company, had to come up with a very elaborate means of hanging thick, heavy-duty nets. Nets were hung all along along the edge of the coastline before any of the construction could start, and so that we captured any debris before it fell into the waters. So this is just one of the ways, but there are lots of other things we do. One of the things we do on a very regular basis is we have what's known as a SWIP, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan that we develop for every construction site. And it's a very elaborate means of ensuring that nothing that should not be going into our storm drains goes into the stormwater. I mean, it's a very, there's bales and there's all sorts of things that it's a drawing, it's a special drawing that's done and checked and approved by the building departments before construction can start. So there's a lot of things we do. Unfortunately, construction still remains very polluting because while we can do a lot to protect the stormwater, for instance, I mean, there's not all that much we can do to protect the air. However, another thing that's happening and has been happening for a few decades now is our construction products are getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner with far fewer volatile organic compounds being used in our building materials. And so it's not only making the air cleaner, the buildings, once they're built, occupants aren't breathing bad chemicals into their lungs as much as they used to before. And yet another thing actually that we are doing is after buildings are built, a lot of buildings go through a very extensive flush out process so that any remnants of these construction products in the air gets flushed out before occupants start using the space. So there's various things we are doing. Yes? I think it's the Scandinavian countries. They're way ahead of us, and they're doing the most. The great thing, though, about the U.S. is, the WELL certification, the LEED certification. LEED, by the way, stands for Leadership in Energy Efficient Design, and it was developed by the U.S. Green Building Council. And I was very lucky. I got the opportunity to work on the very first LEED project in California, actually the very first LEED project in the nation. And I have pretty much been on that trajectory since and worked on a lot of LEED projects. But getting back to the point I'm trying to make is a lot of the green building certifications that are being used all over the world, pretty much most of them, have originated in the U.S. And the U.S. has really, I would say, come a very long way. Once these certifications came up, they have the uptake in the industry has been tremendous, and we've made a lot of progress. But we still are some ways off from the Scandinavian countries. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Transportation efficiency, so we know we are, a lot of buildings that target green building strategies are trying to find properties, lots where they can be much closer to much closer public transportation, like closer to BART, closer to a major arterial road like El Camino Real, which has a lot of buses coming there, or it's much more conducive to people using bikes. So buildings are trying to get much closer to public transportation. A lot of buildings also, what they do is once they're built, they set aside some money and they give their occupants free passes to use for public transportation and come to work that way. Like, my last employer before I became, now I freelance as an architect, I do commercial and residential projects, but I was working up until 2019 and as an employee, and my employer used to, I used to have free light rail passes from my employer, and I used to actually use the light rail all the time because it was great. I could take my laptop with me and work on the light rail till I got to my destination. So I actually used it extensively. So a lot of buildings are doing that as well. Any other questions? Yes?
So the regulation and the different things that California has, like CEQA, has made us very sustainable in our building strategies.
Yes.
But it's also been a cause for our affordability crisis and our homelessness crisis as it relates to the expense and time frame of building these buildings. So do you think we can balance building sustainably, but also making sure that we're building at a higher speed and a higher rate so that homes become more affordable?
Yeah, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic question. I would say that yes, while California, just like you said, California has these fantastic goals. Not just all the states in the U.S., but countries all over the world look to us for energy efficiency and water efficiency leadership. But California also has a lot of red tape. And I can tell you firsthand from working as an architect, and most of my life I've worked on very, very large commercial projects. The amount of time that it takes here in California to get the project from initial conceptual idea to actually getting the drawings done and getting permits and starting construction is just tremendous. And we really, really need to cut back on that time. When you have so much time, it directly adds to the cost of construction, and that cost of construction, it basically comes out of our wallets. When we are trying to buy homes, we are trying to buy condos, all of that is, we are indirectly paying for all that. So yes, I totally agree that the government, the state really needs to do a lot more and they are trying to get rid of a lot of regulations, especially where housing is concerned. They're really trying to cut back on a lot of the regulations that would have held up and increased the permitting process. They're trying to cut back on that, and they have cut back on it. So we are working towards it, but the housing affordability is just such an intractable, difficult problem. It's not going to be solved overnight. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. We have 2 more minutes. Yes?
What inspired you to get into the architecture business?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Actually, buildings are my biggest passion. I think by the time I was in middle school, I already knew that this is what I wanted to do, and pretty much nothing else comes close. I love to paint, and I paint large canvases. It's one of my hobbies, and when I'm painting, it's the happiest time that of my day or my week. But when I'm designing, I love designing so much. I enter into a different part of my brain. I don't know, I can't describe it, but I lose track of time. And it's just, I just love designing so much. But it's not just, in my case, it's not just designing. I just love building. So I enjoy the whole process, whether it's designing, whether it's figuring out. Once you design, you've got to figure out how your design is going to be built. You need to figure out the construction that goes into that design and put it on the drawings. So I enjoy that process. I enjoy the process of project management. Making sure the building gets constructed right. So I enjoy the whole process because I just love building. So for me, it was just something innate, and my biggest passion. But I should stop. I think you guys need to get back to your classes. I don't want to delay you. But thank you so much for coming. I enjoyed talking about my biggest passion, and I hope all of you have been able to take something away from this.